Welcome to the Work is Weird Now podcast. Whether you're nearing retirement, entering the workforce for the first time, or caught somewhere in the confusing muddle in the middle, you're likely sensing it and you're probably living it. We know we are, and we want to know why. Listen in as we interview experts and everyday people like you to find out how best to navigate the ever-growing weirdness of work in the modern age. Welcome to Work is Weird Now podcast. We are thrilled to have Tamu Thomas with us here today. She's going to talk to us about the power of belonging, which we are increasingly learning is an important aspect of the workplace today. So we're going to have a great conversation with her. Tamu, if you could just kick us off by introducing yourself and maybe telling us about what was your weird work moment of the week, that would be great.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am very much looking forward to our conversation. So, my name is Tamu Thomas. I am a keynote speaker. I talk a lot about connection and belonging from a somatic perspective, and I facilitate workshops, usually under the same umbrella. I am a consultant for service-based experts and people who are in middle management in corporates who want to build a thought leadership brand, a thought leadership strand to their career. And I'm also the author of a book called Women Who Work Too Much, Break Free from Toxic Productivity and Find Your Joy. And my weird work moment, so first of all, I love words. And years ago, I had a program and lots of people talked about how they felt like they were weird. And I was like, this word keeps coming up. So I looked up the etymology of the word weird. So its origins are Germanic, and it was W-Y-R-D, which meant destiny. And people who were considered to be weird were people who had some kind of control over destiny. So for a bit of context. So my weird work moment is that I wrapped up working with somebody this week, and the end, she was so luminous and glowing about our experience. And that was weird for me because months previously, we were having a bit of struggle, which is very often the case when you're coaching because you're really challenging and stretching people. And I'm not somebody for elephants in the room. If something's going on, I want to name it. And so we had a conversation that was very, very tricky for this person because they were used to conflict being something that wasn't resolved and didn't turn out to be something that was useful. So we had this conversation, which was full of conflict. And from my perspective, when we're talking about connection and belonging, a rupture in a relationship, when it's repaired well, often deepens and strengthens the relationship and creates a real sense of belonging. And it was a bit tricky afterwards. It was very weird because we were both very awkward because of the conversation we'd had, but it turned into a really fruitful coaching relationship. And in our final session, she expressed that one of the things she learned from the most in all of the things we experienced together was the art of rupture and repair and how it strengthens and enabled her to feel safe in our coaching relationship.
Wow, that sounds like a whole episode in itself, potentially. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's already challenging some of my notions around the word belonging. So maybe a good place to start is just to discuss what is belonging in the context of work. How would you define it?
Well, belonging in its essence is about being able to be who you are in the environment you're in. So a lot of people talk about belonging, but what they're really talking about is assimilation or tolerance. They're not talking about people being able to be the full expression of who they are. We're often talking about people being the version of themselves we want them to be. Mm-hmm. Now, I am not under any illusion, and I'm not saying that people should just come to work as they feel like. As human beings, it is natural and authentic for parts of us to be more pronounced in certain environments and for us to scale back parts of us. Like, that is natural, that is normal. It's not inauthentic. That is us adapting who we are according to the environment. It's not people pleasing. But there are lots of people who do not feel safe enough, particularly in work environments, to be able to do that. So show me, I was having a conversation with somebody I'm working with, shout out Jess Malley, co-founder of the Awetu School of Organising. We were having a conversation and Jess said, she talks a lot about organisational health, and they said, show me an organisation where a fat, black, trans woman with a disability is able to do her best work and ask for the support she needs and be able to advocate for things, then we've got a healthy work environment. So belonging is being able to be, you don't have to shove parts of who you are in your pocket to be able to thrive in that environment.
So we know that belonging is one of the strongest predictors of engagement and well-being at work. We've seen lots of statistics and research about that recently. And yet I think so many people feel like they don't belong, or they don't feel like they can show up and be their authentic versions of themselves at work. Why do you think there's such a gap between what companies are providing and how people feel in those different work environments?
To be totally frank, it's because most companies, because companies are lots of human beings coming together to create the company, us as human beings, we haven't been taught the skill of holding discomfort. So when we experience things that are inconvenient or uncomfortable, we want to shut them down immediately. So we're often in environments where, rather than looking at what is going on and then trying to find a solution for what is going on, we're often in environments where we want to shut it down. So people will talk about resolving things really quickly, but what they're doing is shutting down and not having a look at what's going on because they feel uncomfortable. That's what happens in organizations as well, because it's very uncomfortable and there's a lot of shame in not knowing. We don't have the strength, we haven't developed the capacity to sit with that uncertainty and to hold space for people to be wrong, to make mistakes, and to experiment. So we are often trying to create a sense of belonging at the level of our comfort. And usually we are operating at the level of comfort of a straight, cis, heterosexual, able-bodied white man who has experienced difficulties, because we all do, but doesn't understand the complexities people with marginalized identities experience.
Do you think, I mean, I'm just thinking about the sort of political context over the last, say, 10 to 15 years, and this push towards more political correctness and towards creating a psychologically safe, quote unquote, environment that speaks to a lot of things you're talking about, which is that I don't want to mention the otherness in the room because I don't want to offend anybody. Do you think that's sort of gone too far, and now that's preventing some of the conversations from happening and some of that discomfort from playing out?
I think that political correctness doesn't do anything for anyone. When we look at belonging on a somatic, like belonging, connection, they are inherently biological things. So we feel a sense of belonging. So it doesn't matter how many table tennis tables are put in an office, how many pizzas are ordered, we experience that sense of belonging through our bodies, and it happens below the level of our consciousness. So we might try to tell ourselves, oh, this is great, this is fantastic, but there's often a disconnection with those thoughts and what we're actually experiencing through our bodies. And polyvagal theory teaches us, and polyvagal theory is the science of human safety and connection, Stephen Porges, it teaches us that 80% of communication goes from body to brain, and then our brain deciphers that in an inefficient way. So our body is constantly feeding our brain's data about whether we're safe or we're unsafe. And that then informs our mindset. That then informs how we experience things. So when we understand that belonging is inherently biological, we'll have to slow down. We don't like to slow down, because in any organization, efficiency is prioritized, productivity, which is very toxic, is prioritized. So people don't have the opportunity to actually think about and feel into what's going on. So for me, the conversation about political correctness is redundant. When we think about what it is to belong, belonging is not convenient. Belonging is really, really challenging. Talking about my weird work of the week, that was very challenging. If I didn't prioritize belonging when people are working with me, I would have let that slide. We both would have known that there was something wrong, and we would have pretended it didn't exist. I had to provide an additional coaching session so that we could focus on that, full stop. We had to work together to brainstorm, not just like what would work for me or what would work for the person, what would work for the goals this person has set for themselves. That takes time, but that investment of time has a huge return. When organisations can think like that, they will start to see that slowing down to look at what's going on and co-creating an alliance that is in service of the objectives of the organisation, things will be different. I say all the time, for many of us, work is the longest partnership, the longest intimate partnership we'll ever be in. But we deal with the relationship with work like a lot of people do with romantic relationships. Lots of unsaid agreements, lots of assumptions, lots of, well, you should know me well enough by now, or you should know what I think. So all of these assumptions cause problems. Workplaces, in order to create that sense of belonging, need to slow down and look at what needs to be co-created so that everybody is working to the same goals, rather than what happens, which is very much like the drama triangle. You've got these victims, you've got these villains, you've got these heroes, and everybody is working for themselves rather than working for furthering the organisation, which will also benefit them as individuals.
So I spend a lot of time working with organizations telling them to slow down for a variety of different reasons, right? And to create space for people to think and co-create and things like that. And I know how hard it is to get them to think that way and to see the value of it.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, what's at stake if they don't do this? So if they don't actually take time to ensure that everyone feels a sense of belonging within the organization, what's the output of that?
Low engagement, low staff morale, churn, people like leaving. I was speaking at an event around last year this time, and there were so many, it was for women in leadership, there were so many women who were eyeing up sabbaticals, who were, I mentioned an experience I had when I was a social worker where work was so stressful. There were a couple of times I was driving and I thought I could do just a minor car accident, just something minor, like a bit of mild whiplash, so I can have some rest. What's at stake is people catastrophizing. People don't have ideations of harming themselves, but the environment they're working with is such that they feel like that's their only escape. Mm-hmm. So the price we're paying is health. And when people are unhealthy, they can't do their best work. Mm-hmm. I talk a lot about inspirational leadership, because if we are creating an inspiring environment where people feel galvanized and activated to do their best work, that's somewhere where people want to keep coming back to. One of the organizations I worked for, my manager was so inspiring. I wanted to work hard for her, and she was very clear that, yeah, we work hard, but we also rest hard as well. So for her, it wasn't a case of hard work was rewarded straight away with more hard work. She implemented clinical supervision, which other departments didn't have. We had opportunities to think about what we had experienced, to think collectively about how we could support each other, about what needed to happen moving forward. So we wanted to do our best. We wanted to engage.
Can we break that down into the day-to-day as somebody who's been in-house, been in consultancy, been a line manager of other people? Like, prime example, as a marketer, we build up to these campaigns that launch, and you can be as prepared as you want to be. Yep. And it's so intense, and then it almost goes off like a bottle of pop. I've been exactly the same with my teams, where we'll have a steady state week, right? Because, or longer if needed, but the week after, like a big launch or big event, whatever it may be, that your inbox is burning, like all of the things, and that will be getting to you. And it's just, let's have we're not just all signing out for the week, just get your house in order and try and get all of that catharticness back. Yeah. How did you experience that? What were like the actual practical things that inspirational manager, what did she do? Sorry, I said she. I assumed it was a she.
Yeah, it was a she. Absolutely. So I'm a very visual thinker. Mm-hmm. So I saw it as packing up the Christmas decorations.
Yeah.
So it was, as a social worker, you're trained to have a reflective practice. And so there would be an opportunity to reflect on what had gone on. And she was very keen on making sure that we weren't just social work previously, I don't know about now, huge blame culture.
Yeah.
So it was all about what went wrong and how could we do better. So she actively encouraged us to think about what went right as well, and how we could double down on that and do more of that stuff. And so I didn't know anything about positive psychology at that time, but I knew that I had to answer the question about what went well and how I was celebrating myself at the end of that. So I was ending on a high note, because there were always loads of things that had gone wrong. Then it was like tidying up. So, you know, you've got, thinking about the Christmas tree, you've got bits of glitter, you've got bits of tinsel. So that's me looking at my inbox, looking at what's urgent, what needs to be addressed straight away, what's important. So I'm planning what's going on in my inbox, rather than feeling like the cookie monster, just like trying to eat my way through everything at once. And then I would plan what my big moves were going to be, and give myself a couple of days of quiet admin, tidying up, you know, hoovering up the glitter and whatnot, and then do the big moves, and then do the smaller things.
The big rock, small rock theory is really good in that sense. And it's really important to give you that time and space, because like you say, the relentless wheel of things it's there, and that's work. But life now is always on. We're in this always on culture, and I think this is probably what your book talks about as well, is how if you've got that in the workspace and in the workplace and then out of work, then no wonder we're at such serious levels of burnout and all of those types of things.
I've had to be very discerning and very disciplined with myself, not to, you know, I'm a woman, I'm brought up in this society. I was very much about the women can have it all, ladette culture, anything you can do, I can do better. I was a fully paid up member of the Girl Boss Society. Like, I wanted to do everything. And what I've had to become really disciplined about, and sometimes fight with myself about, is, so my number one goal in life is to be a well-rested woman. That's my ultimate goal.
Love that.
Right?
I love that.
Sign me up.
And in this society, let's be honest, it costs a lot of money, but there are limits. And so I ask myself, are the choices I'm making taking me closer towards the goal of being a well-rested woman, or taking me further away? And if they're taking me further away, are they worth it? Because sometimes I've got an 18-year-old. She's forever trying to take me away from this well-read. Oh, Mum, can you pick me up from the train station? All of this kind of stuff. She's forever trying to take me away from that. But I've got to think, like, what is the cost? Is it worth it? Am I going to get a return on investment? And I don't want people to think that that's all la-di-da, kumbaya, I'm sitting on a lily pad. Sometimes I have to really crank up the work, because that's going to support me to be able to do the rest later on. If I have got a sense that something needs to be done, despite writing my book, Women Who Work Too Much, despite knowing all I know, it really plays on my mind and I need to get it done. So I tidy up as much as I can beforehand, which sometimes does mean that there's a week of late nights, early mornings, because it paves the way for me going on holiday and not quickly checking my emails and those sorts of things.
It makes us the way for space. And it's so interesting you say that. Somebody asked me the other day, oh, how was your day? And I said, I've been really productive, but my list was too big. I've almost set myself up to fail. And it goes back to that, what is actually achievable, so that you're not already setting off with the mindset that I'm not doing what I need to do here. And those little things, they are just small steps, but create that positive mental space, right? And like you say, it's all right having a short period of the late nights, early mornings, but it's not sustainable forever.
No, all of this 110%, it doesn't exist.
Yes.
And what I want people to really understand is that when you are trying to operate at 110% constantly, that energy has to come from somewhere. And I want everybody to know that when you run out of your natural energy, you're starting to take energy away from your vital organs. So people that are very capable, burnout for very capable high performers looks like coronary heart disease. It looks like heart attack. It looks like stroke. Okay? People talk about, oh, I'm so resilient and all of this kind of stuff. People who are very resilient in that way are masters at suppressing their felt sense so that they can keep going. So we might talk about people who are like, oh gosh, I need to take a break. This is too much. We might talk about them as being like highly sensitive. We might say that they're not resilient. No, they're attuned. They're attuned to the signals of their body. So when they're talking about burnout, they're really talking about extreme exhaustion. When people who are highly capable talk about burnout, what they're talking about is a serious health issue. And when I had my experience, I didn't know what burnout was when I was in burnout, and I was burnt out for the best part of a decade. It's only when I saw somebody I know have a psychotic breakdown, and I looked at this person and I thought, oh my goodness, the way you're behaving is how I feel inside my brain and my body quite often. And I'm forever saying to myself, if one more bad thing happens, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. That was burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so, thank you for that honesty, because I think it's hearing, we know everyone hears the word burnout, but actually what does that mean in relation to somebody, I think is so important to shine the light on.
Yeah. So just wanted to return back to some of the stuff you alluded to at the beginning. Just to throw some stats out there, because I always come armed with my stats.
Yes.
So we know that 31% of UK workers feel a strong sense, only 31% of UK workers feel a strong sense of belonging. And those numbers are even lower for Black, LGBTQ+, and other underrepresented groups. And so, first of all, just wondering, how do you see that playing out in day-to-day in some of the spaces you work in? And then just going back to that idea of the culture of conformity, too. What does that look like? And what are those kind of invisible ways that that plays out in work?
So the sense of belonging, there are so many strands, right? So sometimes we as individuals have to look at, what have we internalized? Have we internalized misogyny? Have we internalized racism? What are we, to a lesser or greater degree, inflicting on ourselves? So there are lots of Black women I work with, for example, and they have internalized the message of being a strong Black woman. So it's strong, but it's strong at all costs. It's strong at the expense of asking for the help you need, which then manifests as not getting the promotions they desire, because people take for granted they're just doing what they always do. And because traditionally Black people are often taught, don't make a big deal, you don't want people to believe you've got ideas above your station. They work really hard, but don't claim the work they've done. So they're just strong, and then there's no results, which leads to feeling isolated, ostracized, which also contributes to burnout. So we see that. We also see that there are people who are part of dominant groups who take for granted that their experience is the experience. And because we've got so many people that are harboring feelings of, I'm excluded, I'm not belonging, and people thinking, well, this is normal, you should be like us, it creates a lot of tension. So there's a lot of emotional charge. So then people aren't having the conversations, because now I'm already embodying the strong Black woman. If I advocate for myself, you're now going to think I'm an aggressive Black woman, and that's a stereotype I don't want to get involved in. Now, me as a white man who says I don't understand what's going on, I'm likely to get cancelled, because it means that I don't care. It means that I haven't paid attention, and all of these other things. So we just create a massive environment that is underpinned by shame, and the shame is just manufactured and compounded. And on top of that, we're all pretending it's normal. We're all pretending it's great. So that's one of the major ways I see. And also, because people don't really understand what belonging and unity is that you are who you are. And even if there are parts of you I don't like or make me feel uncomfortable, as long as they're not causing harm, like irreparable harm, you're allowed to be you and I'm allowed to be me. But people speaking to the conformity want everybody to be exactly the same. That's not belonging. So it creates environments where people are trying to support equity and genuinely create opportunities for all, because people see it as a pie. Well, if I give you a bigger slice, that means I've got less. People are then very hostile and feel hard done by when there are initiatives to create opportunities for people who don't have the same access. So I will hear lots of things, for example, a rising tide raises all ships. Guess what? Some people are on a handmade raft. Some people have got armbands. Some people don't have any form of craft at all. We need to take that into consideration and recognise it's not a slight against you as an individual, it's improving things for the collective. And then with the conformity, again, it's part of the human condition. Like we are, as much as we're hardwired for connection, we're hardwired for convenience as well. And conformity feels convenient. Conformity means we can, everything's nice because everybody's doing things in the same way, this is good, when actually it's inauthentic. So we have to be honest about parts that are part of the human condition. So it's not that you are a angry black woman, it's not that you are a uncaring white man. There are some things that are inherently human, which is why I talk about our biology so much, and why I talk about our nervous system, particularly the autonomic nervous system, because when we can see how much of our behavior is guided by survival rather than connection, we can start to recognize, there's something going on in the environment that is sending me signs of danger. I feel threatened, so I'm operating from survival. Is this a situation that genuinely needs me to be operating from fight, flight, freeze or fawn? Or can I come into presence and connection and connect with the individual or the group of people I'm in the environment with and the environment as it stands? So something I will ask myself is, like, how much of this is my high school experience that I'm projecting into this situation? But again, that requires slowing down. That requires taking a moment and taking responsibility for what's yours and not projecting it into the situation, which is incredibly hard in an environment where we're taught we're supposed to know everything. Yeah. We're not supposed to make any mistakes, and you must not offend anybody.
Fear of failure. The point you made right at the beginning around this isn't people pleasing, this is us adapting to our scenario. That was joy to my ears, because I've always been like, I'm a guilty people pleaser, classic millennial, jump how high. But I felt very seen when you said that, because I do feel personally that I can adapt to scenarios that you're working with. And I'm working on a Pride campaign at the moment. I had a really insightful conversation with somebody who's going to share their This Is Me story, which is amazing. And he's explaining that he actually dials up in a corporate environment, more so than in a home environment, so that it can make others feel more comfortable and that's okay to bring that side of themselves to work. And it was, I don't know, I don't want to say it was enlightening. It was so many different things, but hearing it portrayed that way, he's not people pleasing. He's actually doing that to make others feel even more safe, that they could feel like they belong even more.
Absolutely.
And that was admirable, you know.
So that's co-regulation.
Yes, and knowing yourself. Just knowing yourself. And he very, very clearly knows himself. And I thought that was really powerful and inspirational. Yeah.
Just touching on the millennial thing, actually, because I think the generational differences are interesting in this context as well, and actually the cultural differences too. So I grew up in America. I had a mother who was Australian and a father who was British, and my dad had very much what I see in this culture among that generation, which is this sort of wartime mentality of just shut up, put up with things. Nobody discusses any kind of emotion. It's all sort of shoved underneath the rug. Whereas my very expressive Irish Australian mother, who just emoted all over the place, was a very different experience. And so coming here 20 years ago and now being married to a Brit, I can see the vast difference between me and them in terms of how we react to situations, how much we're willing to express how we feel about what's going on in the room, how much we're willing to speak about that elephant who's standing in the room as well, which I seem to be very willing to do and nobody else does.
Oh my goodness,
And then the other thought I had while you were talking was, you mentioned the high school thing, and my 13-year-old daughter, it's very interesting watching her go through school right now, because arguably that 13-year-old age is that time in school where you feel most need to conform, right? You're just trying to get the spotlight off you and fit in as much as possible. And I see her having a little more leeway than I did when I was a kid. There's a bit more wider circle of acceptance of different types of people, but it's still very hard. So I'm just worried about, I'm just curious about your impression of how generational differences factor into this as well.
You know, what is very interesting to me is the number of Gen Z that hold quite old school, what we would consider to be conservative values and views. That's very, it's like the gap between people who we would consider to be progressive and people who are kind of traditionally conservative in that age group is very, very huge. So I've got an 18-year-old, and the narrative between her and her friends is, you know, it's so challenging to have a boyfriend, because when you scratch below the surface, they like content that is red pill content, for example. Or they'll say, like, you know, they're not into red pill content. However, they saw a creator talking about this and they agree in this particular way.
I'm so sorry, I've got no idea what that is.
What?
The red pill content.
Oh my goodness! Have you seen Adolescence?
Yes. Oh yeah. I have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
fine.
Yes. So red pill content tends to be content. This is what I'm saying, that doesn't support human flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much about returning to a time of old traditional values, men being men and women being feminine. And women being feminine tends to be domestic duties, care, you know, emotional labour, that sort of thing. And the girls that I'm around, my daughter and her friends, expressing how they are much more fluid in their understanding of what it is to be a human being, and progressive thoughts. And the boys they're around, boys they've been to school with for years, who they've got a lot in common with, where it comes to what we might describe as their politics, is so vastly different. They're finding it very difficult to date, basically.
Wow. Yeah.
And then when my daughter was 13, there was very much this rejection of individuality and conforming to what was going on, sold as individuality. And I was like, it hasn't changed much, really. They've got more access to everybody else because of social media and stuff. But I remember, like, I didn't want to be me when I was 13. I wanted to be like whoever was perceived to be the cool girls. I wanted to be my version of them. There were so many things I got involved with that I wasn't particularly interested in, but that was what was going on. And that's the developmental stage. It's a rite of passage. I think we do loads of things we don't enjoy doing so we can find the stuff we really do enjoy doing. So I think because in this social media landscape, everything's got a label. Everything is this kind of thing. TikTok is my it's not guilty, is a place that I spend a lot of my time. And there was this new thing about your armpit flap. And these vests are so great because they conceal your armpit flap. I was like, I've never heard of this before. Like, it's part.
But
it's
now
just,
I'm thinking about it all the time.
yeah. But I'm just like, this isn't a real thing. But we're labeling and we're categorizing the normal parts of being a human being like it's a new thing, like it's something to be pathologized. Where there, I don't know, maybe it's because I was a social worker, maybe I'm a pretty laid back person, but I think there are some things we just need to go through because they're part of the human experience, and we don't need to make like a big deal about it.
So there's kind of roots here of what, you know, to kind of wrap up the conversation, what do we need leaders to do and foster around belonging? But starting with individuals first, how can they develop belonging from the inside out?
By my book,
obviously. Yeah, of course.
Step one.
Step one. Step two, I think that foundational nervous system understanding should be mandatory for all human beings. And I think that when people go into a leadership role, part and parcel of leadership needs to be understanding how our biology works, because we're so focused on our mindset and mind over matters. We are we live in our biology first. We're inherently biological and inherently emotional. We need to be able to understand that. But when people understand their own nervous systems, instead of being like, oh gosh, I need to improve my mindset, I need to do some kind of self-improvement, they will be able to start to say, oh, I can recognize I'm in struggle because my survival physiology has been activated. I can feel that I'm going into a state of fight. Let me have a look at what's going on and see what has activated this state of flight and whether or not this response is appropriate to what I'm experiencing right now. So I used to have a workshop called Be Your Nervous System's Best Friend, which is now a chapter in my book. And I would ask people to consider everyday ordinary things that happen that activate their survival responses. And it would be things like an email from your manager saying, can we meet, with no description, straight away.
Yes,
right?
we've all been there.
Exactly.
Dan's nervous system has just been activated.
Just been triggered. I've triggered. Yeah,
So
passive aggressive emojis.
Oh my goodness. And all of these, as per my previous email, all of this kind of stuff, it does actually activate our survival physiology, because we're like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And on a somatic level, it's like in our brains, we're like, we don't know what our manager wants to meet with us for. But our nervous system doesn't know that. So our nervous system is like, oh my gosh, are we at risk of serious harm here? So that's what's going on physiologically for us. So if we understand that, as a manager, you're not just going to send an email saying, are you available at 2 p.m. on Friday? You're going to give some context. You're going to be mindful about your body language. So there are people I work with who they talk about their organisation says it's a family-friendly environment, that they understand that your personal life is important. But when they say, I'm sorry, I can't come into work this week because my child's got chicken pox, the body language and the facial expression doesn't match what's being said. And that body language and facial expression says far more to us than what we are hearing coming out of some. So it's about developing that sense of self-awareness and not making yourself wrong for it, understanding your biology is doing what it's designed to do, and you need to give it new data so that it understands that this signal doesn't mean there's a saber-toothed tiger coming to attack us. You just need to report on the last project you did because they're going to do something similar. So it just takes the temperature down.
That bit's fascinating, because I think we're in a mindset first culture at the moment, which I don't doubt is wrong. I do think a lot of people do need to work on their mindset. I 100% do.
Yeah.
It's a thing that is not a one size fits all. It's a progressive work on it all of the time. But there is actually a step before of knowing yourself and knowing what your, like you say, all of those emotional and levels are before that. It's like
Can I just
building
add,
blocks.
As a woman who menstruates, we have got our hormonal cycles that also impact how our nervous system operates. So years ago, I had a coach, and one of our sessions per month, I was always really down. And I said, can we change? Because I'm in my luteal phase.
Yeah.
And I can't believe what I'm saying to myself, because that version of me tells lies. And we switched it, and the coaching sessions were so much better. So when you know that, it's not about we make it somebody else's responsibility. Oh, this is great data. So now I know that where possible, I need to organise myself so that I'm working with my biology, and that is supporting the mindset I want to have, rather than using your mindset to dominate and suppress your biology.
It's just...
I'm just trying to imagine us all saying that to our male bosses.
Well, you don't necessarily... One, I think that we should, because they need to know we're 51% of the population. But for the most part, this is great data for us. So you
Knowing
don't
yourself.
necessarily have... I was working with a female coach. We're both entrepreneurs. We have a lot more flexibility. But you may just say to your manager, I've noticed a pattern here that when we meet around this time, it doesn't work for me. I did a course. So my shutdown time when my body starts to go slow is around 2:30 in the afternoon. And I was doing a course that was based in the US. So the timings, that's how it coincided. And so it's like, okay, now I know this, I can do stuff to take care of myself so I have the energy I need. So we don't always have to be, emptying out our purses and spilling out our guts. But it's about us taking responsibility so that we can be the best version of ourselves.
Absolutely, well said. So if you could just wave a magic wand and change the way that workplace culture is now to be better at creating an environment of belonging, what one thing would you tackle first?
I would have... so in the, I think it was like in the 18th and 17th century, they would have these salons where usually men, intellectual people would meet, and they would pontificate and they would discuss things that were going on. I would have salons in the workplace where people are encouraged to share ideas, and people who are in senior positions, they're there to listen, so that they can really hear the day-to-day experience of the people they lead. That will give them great data that shapes their workplace culture. We overestimate, like giving people a good talking to, helping them be motivated. What people need more often than not is a really good listening to.
That's really, really interesting, because we have had somebody come on who works in workplace culture a lot. And he said, I often have companies coming to me and saying, we want to create a listening culture. That's what we're here for. And he's like,
just listen.
Yeah.
That's how you start.
Just
you
listen to
know?
people.
Sit on your hands, keep your mouth closed. And for me, you can see I'm a yapper. I like to talk. And I've trained myself to keep my mouth closed and listen and observe. And when I feel like I'm bursting to say something, I have to ask myself, is it going to add to these people's experience? Or am I just showing that I know something because I am a bit of a know-it-all? And then I just pack it in and listen. Because for most people, giving them the space to talk, they're able to figure things out because they're able to process it verbally. So yeah, let's give people space.
Great. We're interviewing someone today, and he has this book called Brain Sparks, and every page is like an idea of something to do, and one of them is, if you're having a meeting, the host of the meeting needs to make sure that everybody at that meeting has had something to say, because people won't naturally bring things to the table with louder voices and things like that. That's absolutely fine. But if the host really makes sure that everybody in the room is heard, there's some ideas that may not have even surfaced if you haven't done that. And I
think
that.
Going back to your idea of this being more embodied too, is actually when we start to land more in our bodies, we can take cues from the room that we couldn't if we were just tuning in to the
100%.
voices. So I think that also kind of ties in.
Yeah.
Tamu, this has been an amazing discussion. Thank you so much for coming here and being with us today.
Thank you.
How can people reach you, get your book?
So my book is everywhere you can get books, and if you're more of an audio person, if you've got I'm not like a Spotify ambassador, but if you've got a paid subscription, you get access to audiobooks, so you can listen there. And I highly recommend getting the book and the audiobook, because when you listen to the audio, you've got me doing the guided meditations and the practices with you. So check out my book. The places I hang out the most in terms of digital spaces are LinkedIn. I'm there, Tamu Thomas, and also Instagram, tamu.thomas is where I'm at.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.